Wow, it has been a while, and there are a couple reasons for that. One of them is a surprise, and the other one is maybe a little surprising. The surprise is this. It was almost 2 weeks ago that I received a contact from my daughter and her family from overseas. Most of you know my daughter lives overseas. They were planning to come home with my 2 grandchildren this summer, but wouldn't you know that because of the global crisis, they were stranded. No one was coming or going. They couldn't get into the States, and so there they were overseas. And we kind of resigned ourselves to that. We're okay with that. And then almost 2 weeks ago on Tuesday, my son-in-law contacted me and he said, Dad, I need you to do me a favor. I said, what do you need, Brian? Anything. And he says, I need you to go to New York City and pick something up for me. And I'm like, oh, New York City? This better be an important something. And he said to me, I need you to come to JFK and pick up your daughter and your grandchildren and me on Thursday. Would you do that, please? Yeah, I will do that. Absolutely. And I'm so thankful for a church family that understands me having to make the adjustments that entailed. Thankful to the elders. We talked about how this will inhibit a little bit of my ministry, and it did. But the elders were all like, yes, do this. I love Kerwinsville Alliance. I love my church family. So thankful for all of you. So I picked them up. I brought them here. And so the family of 2 in one house has become a family of 6. And that's been a good transition. That was the surprise. The surprising part that tells why I haven't made any of these videos lately is because I could not think of the way I wanted to verbalize that which God was laying on my heart. I've been reading a book, and God's really been speaking to me through it. It's a book by Dietrich Bonhoeffer called Life Together. And I've been reading it since actually before this pandemic started, and I'm still not done with it. And you may be thinking, you are a slow reader, Pastor Steve. Absolutely, I am a slow reader. But the other reason is because the things in this book are really challenging and difficult to implement in your life. I'm on the next to the last chapter, and the chapter is called Ministry. And Bonhoeffer talks about 7 kinds of ministry that we have when we are together with one another. And when he says life together, he's talking about maybe life together in a communal setting, or life together at a retreat kind of thing, or maybe life together as a church family that gathers together on Sunday mornings, and then in small groups you're together and working together, or maybe just some friends hanging out together repeatedly, or maybe even a family. Doing life together. He says you have at least 7 ministries that you can engage in. Let me highlight them, and then I'm going to talk about one of them. Let me just recount these 7. He says the first of these ministries is the ministry of holding one's tongue. Sounds intriguing. We'll talk about that in a minute. The second ministry is a ministry of meekness. Wow, what's he talking about there? The third ministry is a ministry of listening. And by the way, these remaining 5 ministries are all in regard to serving others. The ministry of listening, the ministry of helpfulness, the ministry of bearing with one another, the ministry of proclaiming, and the ministry of authority. So I want to talk to you about this first one, the ministry of holding one's tongue. And you know that the Bible speaks of this over and over again. In James 3, we're told that if you can hold your tongue, that's quite a feat. You're holding your mind, your body, and everything if you're able to hold your tongue. And then the Bible speaks of it other places as well. James talks about it again in James 4, starting in verse 11, when he says, don't speak evil of one another. Wow, is that relevant? Is that relevant to our society today and the means we have to speak through social media? And it's relevant even inside a family. Do not speak evil of one another, James says. And then the Psalms, in Psalm 50, says, don't slander one another. Keep silent regarding that sort of thing. And even in Ephesians, where it says, don't allow any corrupt communication to come out of your mouth, but only that which is good and which is useful for edifying and ministers grace to the people that hear, in Ephesians 4:29. And what Bonhoeffer is saying here is that these kinds of things, when we hold our tongue, we are actually providing a ministry to the people we're with. You might not have thought it that way, but you're actually serving other people by keeping some of your thoughts to yourself. My wife used to say to me through the years, I'd like to say it was when we were very young, but through the years she has said to me, Steve, just because a thought comes through your mind doesn't mean you have to verbalize it. Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. She's speaking a little bit of Bonhoeffer truth there. You know, our tendency to want to say things, to speak up, to put things out there, usually comes from a lack of compassion and understanding toward other people. And that's very unhealthy to them and surely unhealthy to us as we're speaking. Bonhoeffer says this. He says, when this discipline of the tongue is practiced right from the beginning, each individual makes a matchless discovery. He will be able to cease from constantly scrutinizing the other person, judging him, condemning him, putting him in his particular place where he can gain ascendancy over him and thus do violence to him. I had a person in my life one time who reminded me of that car commercial. I don't know if you remember the car commercial, but they would show you this finely engineered automobile, and they would say, the relentless pursuit of perfection. And I had a person in my life that I felt was practicing that on me, like they were just trying to force this pursuit of perfection into me and make me this person that they wanted to be. And Bonhoeffer says that is so unhealthy, and I would say that God says that the same. Bonhoeffer says that we should practice grace when we're dealing with other people and seeing their shortcomings. We should be gracious. And he says this because he says God is gracious toward you. And although God himself says, be holy as I am holy, he doesn't badger us. He doesn't put us down. He doesn't try to do damage to us. But he lifts us up and graciously helps us to be who he wants us to be. In a sense, when God looks at our lives and sees how distant we are from who he desires that we will be, in a sense we can say God holds his tongue in dealing with us, because he's gracious to us. And you can be sure of this. Bonhoeffer says it, and I have felt it for years, that the more we understand the profound depth of God's grace toward us, the more gracious we will be with other people, and the more able we will be to hold our tongues regarding their lives. It doesn't mean we ignore problems in their lives. It means we don't badger them. We don't scrutinize them. He's going to talk later about how to help one another in areas of weakness. But the very first ministry we have to one another in life together is a ministry of holding one's tongue. Give that some thought, some prayerful thought. Do a little introspection. Take a look into your own heart and into your own life and say, how have I been doing in that? God can enable you to do it, and it will make life together all that more enjoyable and all that more fruitful, and it will make life together all that more God-honoring. I'm Steve Shields. I'm the pastor at Kerwinsville Alliance Church, and I love talking to you. I trust that you will have a blessed day. God bless you.